It started in the basement, not exactly where you'd expect a story like this to begin, but that's where I was, crouched on the cold concrete, flashlight in one hand, the faint smell of mildew and old laundry clinging to the air. Something rustled behind the stacked boxes near the water heater. That was when I heard her voice behind me. You don't have to, but would you mind helping me? I turned and saw her, Diana, my friend Jacob's mom, standing halfway down the steps in her house slippers and that oversized cardigan she always wore, the one with the frayed sleeves. Her voice had that quiet strength, like she didn't ask for help often. Yeah, I said. I got it. The flashlight flickered slightly as I moved forward, eyes adjusting to the gloom. The old wooden shelves along the wall were covered in cans of peaches, a dusty sewing machine, a cracked photo frame. Somewhere behind all that, something scurried again. Been down here since Monday, she said from the steps. I set a trap, but you don't want to check it. She smiled, barely. Something like that. Jacob wasn't home. He'd told me he'd be out late, band rehearsal or something. I was only here to drop off his amp cable. But Diana had opened the door, and then somehow I was standing in the basement with a flashlight, listening to a raccoon panic in a cage it had finally wandered into. I spotted the cage near the back wall, a silver live trap, and inside, a nervous ball. A fur with frantic eyes. The raccoon looked like it regretted every decision it had made this week. I didn't blame it. It's in there, I said. Looks fine. Just scared. She came down the last few steps slowly. I moved aside as she approached the trap, keeping a polite distance. But in the quiet, I could hear her breathing. Not labored, just careful. She crouched beside me, her knee brushing mine for half a second. Poor thing, she murmured. It's been banging around at night. I haven't slept much. I can take it out back. Let it loose near the tree line. You sure? I looked at her. The flashlight caught her face softly, a few strands of hair tucked behind her ear, worry drawn in the lines near her mouth. She didn't look like the woman I remembered from high school drop-offs. She looked tired. Real? Yeah, I said. It's no big deal. We carried it together. I held the handle. She held the door open. Outside, the sky was pale and overcast, and the air smelled like rain that hadn't started yet. The raccoon shifted nervously in the cage as I set it down in the grass. I opened the latch. For a second, it just stared at me, like it couldn't believe it was really free. Then it darted off into the brush, gone without a sound. She exhaled beside me. I've been putting that off all week, she said. I'm not proud of it. I shrugged. Sometimes you just need someone to be there. We stood there a beat longer than we needed to. Then she looked over at me and smiled. Not the polite kind, but the tired, grateful kind. You should stay for dinner, she said. I hesitated. She caught it. Just dinner. I've got leftovers. And I hate eating alone. The breeze caught the edge of her cardigan. The porch light flickered on behind her, casting a warm halo around her frame. I nodded. Okay. We went back inside without saying anything else. And as I followed her up the basement stairs, something in me knew. This wasn't just about a raccoon. This house had been waiting for something. And maybe, without meaning to, so had I. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and something slow-cooked. I hadn't expected a full meal, maybe some reheated pasta or soup from a can, but she'd gone all in. Roasted chicken, potatoes, sautéed green beans with lemon zest. She moved around the kitchen with quiet focus, barefoot on the tile, her sleeves rolled up. I offered to help, and she handed me a cutting board with parsley to chop. Jacob can't even boil rice, she said, not unkindly. But you're already more useful than my son. I laughed. Don't tell him that. She looked up from the oven, a teasing glint in her eye. I won't. Not yet. We ate at the small round table near the back window, the kind meant for two people who've learned how to live with silence. The storm outside hadn't started, but the clouds pressed close. Diana poured red wine into mismatched glasses, one with a small chip at the rim. This used to be his, she said, noticing my glance. He never let me throw it away. I nodded, not pushing. He would have handled the raccoon, she went on. Even enjoyed it. He liked fixing things. Sinks, fences, broken chairs, me sometimes. The last part was said with a small shrug, like she wasn't sure if it was a joke or not. I watched the candlelight catch the side of her face as she spoke. It softened her features, made the lines around her mouth seem more like stories than time. He died for years ago this fall. She said that I didn't know what to say. I just let the quiet stretch between us until she broke it again. I used to hate eating alone, she said. Still do, if I'm honest. You don't have to tonight. She smiled at that. No, I don't. After dinner, I help with the dishes. She handed me a towel to dry with, her fingers brushing my wrist. Barely, but enough to notice. Neither of us pulled away too quickly. Outside, the rain had started, soft and hesitant. She grabbed a blanket and led me to the porch, where two wooden chairs waited, angled slightly toward each other. She wrapped the blanket over her shoulders and sat across from me, knees tucked beneath her. It's nice, isn't it? She said. This kind of quiet. It is. The porch smelled like wet earth and time. A wind chime in the corner swayed gently, letting out occasional soft notes. Her hair was slightly damp, the rain having caught her earlier when she stepped out to light the candle by the stairs. One strand clung to her cheek. She didn't seem to notice, and I didn't want to point it out. It felt too intimate. You've grown up, she said after a long pause. I mean, really grown up. I hope so. No, I remember you coming over in high school, always in some worn-out hoodie, dragging your backpack around like it weighed 100 pounds. You wouldn't look anyone in the eye. I laughed. That sounds about right. But now, she said slowly, you look at people. You notice things. I didn't know how to answer that. I looked down at my hands instead. Sorry, she added, quieter. I probably shouldn't say things like that. It's okay. I don't mind. A few more minutes passed. We didn't say much. Just listened to the rain and let the silence hold us. It wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt necessary. Like we'd both been too full of thoughts, and now we were emptying them out quietly. Together, eventually, she stood. I should put the rest of that wine away before I drink it all. Want help? She shook her head, but her smile lingered. No, you've done enough tonight. I grabbed my jacket from the hook near the door. As I turned to leave, she stood in the kitchen doorway, arms folded gently. The porch light flickered behind me. Thanks for staying, she said. Thanks. For the food. Her laugh followed me out, soft and breathy. It wasn't forced. It was the kind of laugh someone gives when they forget to protect themselves. That sound stayed with me the whole ride home. Longer, maybe. It started to feel natural. Me showing up at Diana's place for one reason or another. Once to bring back a toolbox I borrowed. Another time because she said she had too much pie left over from the night before. Sometimes I made up excuses. Sometimes she did. Jacob never questioned it. She told him I was helping with little things around the house, tightening cabinet hinges, checking on the basement light that kept shorting. He believed it. Why wouldn't he? I wasn't doing anything wrong. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. One Wednesday afternoon, I showed up with no excuse at all. I just knocked. She opened the door like she'd been waiting. No makeup, hair a little undone, wearing a gray t-shirt that hung soft against her collarbones. She didn't look surprised to see me. Hey, I said. Hey, she echoed, then stepped back and let me in. The living room was quiet except for the sound of the dryer running in the back of the house. She gestured toward the kitchen. There's leftover stew. You hungry? Always. She smiled faintly but didn't follow me. I watched her walk down the hallway toward the laundry room, the edge of her shirt catching the warm breeze from the vent. Something in her posture seemed heavy, like her shoulders had given up holding it in. I poured myself a glass of water. Waited. After a minute, I heard a soft sound, almost like a hiccup. I set the glass down and walked down the hall. She was sitting on the small folding stool by the dryer, face in her hands. Her elbows rested on her knees. The low rumble of the machine filled the space like a slow heartbeat that I didn't say anything. I just stepped in and sat on the floor across from her, back against the opposite wall. She wiped her eyes quickly, like it hadn't happened. I'm just tired, she said. I nodded. The dryer hummed on. Clothes thumped inside, slow and rhythmically, like rain against a window. I don't even know why, she whispered. Some days are fine. And then others, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. We sat like that for a while. Me on the floor, her still on the stool, palms flat on her thighs now. She didn't look at me, but she didn't ask me to leave either. Eventually the dryer buzzed its final note and stopped. The silence that followed was sharper than I expected. She stood. Sorry. That was embarrassing. It wasn't, I said quietly. She nodded like she wanted to believe me, but didn't. She opened the dryer and started folding shirts with methodical care, like that might pull her back into herself. I helped, matching socks and folding towels, pretending this was all normal. That evening, I stayed. Of course I did. We ate the stew, reheated in the microwave. She lit a candle out of habit. I opened the window a crack. The breeze brought in the smell of grass and pavement that we didn't talk much. Just small things. The news, the flowers starting to bloom in her backyard, the grocery store clerk who'd complimented her earrings. After we cleaned up, I reached for a dish and she handed me the towel again. This time our fingers didn't touch. She was careful now. I dried in silence while she stood beside me, arms crossed. "You staying for dinner tomorrow too?" she asked suddenly. Without looking at me, I glanced at her. "Is that an invitation?" She didn't answer. It had become our ritual. Not spoken, not named, but it was there, quiet and sturdy, like the hum of the dryer or the porch light that always clicked on right before the sun dipped out. And I realized then, what we had wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real, and we were both pretending not to see it. The rain came back like it had been holding its breath. It tapped against the windows with familiar rhythm, soft but steady, and the air inside the house turned cooler, cleaner, like something had been washed away. She called me that morning too. Asked if I could look at the loose shutter outside her bedroom window. It had started banging in the wind last night and kept her up. I told her I'd be over in 15. I didn't need to check my schedule by the time I got there. She had already pulled a chair under the hallway window and laid out a few tools she wasn't sure how to use. Her cardigan sleeves were rolled to her elbows again. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands escaping like they always did. I climbed onto the chair, bracing myself as I held the shutter still with one hand and worked the drill with the other. She stood just behind me, so close I could feel the warmth of her presence even though she didn't touch me. When I stepped down, I turned to hand her the drill, and she didn't step back. Not even a little. For a moment, we both looked at the glass, the window beside us reflecting the two of us standing there. Our outlines blurred together, overlapping in the rain-streaked pane. She finally stepped back and said, "Thank you." Her voice soft, almost distracted. Later, at dinner, she made grilled vegetables and rice. Something light, the kind of meal that didn't ask too much of either of us. But her questions did. "Do you like your job?" she asked. Really like it." I hesitated. "It pays the bills." She gave a quiet smile. "That's not what I asked." So I told her about how I'd taken the first job offer after college because I didn't know what else to do. How I sat at a desk all day pretending I cared. How I felt like I was floating through someone else's life most of the time. She didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly and poured me another inch of wine. "No one's ever asked me that," I admitted. "Maybe they should," she said. After dinner, she asked if I could help her carry some old boxes to the garage. Most of it was stuff she said she'd meant to sort through for years, things her husband had stored, things she didn't quite know what to do with. The boxes weren't heavy, but they felt like they mattered. When we finished, we stood in the garage for a long second. The light overhead flickered once, then held steady. The rain had slowed to a mist now. The air smelled like sawdust and cardboard. She leaned against the doorway, hands tucked into the pockets of her cardigan. "You always show up when I need something," she said. "That's not why I keep coming." Her eyes lifted to mine. Something passed between us, quiet and sharp, like the space between a match and a flame. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because I needed to. Maybe because it had been building between us for weeks. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked. She didn't speak right away. She looked at the floor, then back at me, and I swear I saw her debating it, measuring the risks, the rules, the weight of whatever this was. Then softly, "No." Just that no explanation. No permission. No pretense. I stepped closer, but not enough to break whatever line we hadn't crossed yet. She stood there, still and steady, like she was anchoring herself to the doorway, like if she let go, something might unravel that we didn't touch. We didn't say goodnight the way people usually do. When I left, the porch light came on behind me, and I turned once to see if she was still there. She was. Still watching. Nothing about this felt accidental. And neither of us were pretending anymore. The next time I came over, there was no excuse. No chores to do. No errands. No Raccoon. Just a quiet text earlier that morning. "Dinner tonight?" And I replied without thinking, "Yes." It was already evening when I parked out front. The street was quiet, still damp from an afternoon drizzle. The porch light wasn't on yet, but the kitchen window glowed softly. I knocked out of habit, but the door opened before I could lower my hand. She was wearing something simple, just a navy blue sweater and jeans, but I noticed the way her hair was brushed more deliberately, how her lips held a shade of color I hadn't seen before. "Hey," I said. "Hi," she replied. There was a pause, brief, but not awkward, before she stepped aside to let me in. The table caught my eye first. It was different. A real tablecloth this time, linen with tiny embroidered leaves at the corners. 2 cloth napkins, neatly folded. A candle flickering gently between our plates. The light was low, warmer than usual, as if she'd dimmed everything on purpose. "You went all out," I said, voice quieter than I meant. She shrugged, softly, brushing a piece of hair behind her ear. "Felt like cooking today." The food was slow and fragrant. Roasted vegetables, saffron rice, grilled chicken with rosemary. We ate slower than usual. Not because the food was fancy, but because neither of us wanted to rush whatever was happening between us. Each bite felt like it came with something unsaid. She asked me what I was most afraid of. I stared at my plate a moment before answering. Wasting time. Letting things pass me by. Realizing too late that something mattered. She nodded, her fingers gently turning the stem of her wine glass. "That used to be mine too." "Used to be," she exhaled. "Now I think it's letting myself feel things and then losing them." Again. The word again lingered like a thread between us. She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. "You've been through a lot," I said. She looked up at me then, and for once, she didn't wave it off or smile past it. I stopped feeling things, Evan, for a long time. I had to, just to get through the days. The house. The absence. Jacob leaving. Everything slowed down. Grief makes everything quieter. And then you start confusing quiet with safety. I listened. Every word she spoke landed with the kind of weight that stays. She set her fork down. But when you started coming around, it was like something started humming again. Not loud, just alive. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't. I just sat there, letting her words settle in the room between us like steam. We cleared the dishes together, slow and unhurried. The candle stayed lit. Later, we sat on the couch. The living room was still warm from the oven's heat. The faintest sound of crickets hummed through the cracked window. She tucked her legs under her and leaned her head against my shoulder. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too deeply. I didn't want her to pull away. Her hair smelled like lavender shampoo, faint and clean. The fabric of her sweater brushed against my arm, soft and familiar now. I could feel the weight of her trust just from the way she let herself rest there. We didn't talk. Not for a long time. Just listened to the sound of the house settling, the candle sputtering now and then on the table. Eventually, in a voice so low I barely heard it, she said, "You know this changes everything." My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. I turned slightly, enough to let my cheek rest against the top of her head. "I know," I whispered. Outside, the wind had picked up. A few leaves skittered across the porch. Time didn't feel real in that moment, like we'd fallen into some pocket between past and future, and the present was the only thing that mattered. We stayed like that until long after the candle had burned low, the wax pooled and glistening. Around the wick, the silence between us had shifted. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was comfort, something earned. Eventually, I stood to leave. She walked me to the door. Neither of us reached for a hug. It would have been too much. Or not enough. I didn't know. She opened the door slowly. The porch light flicked on above us, humming softly. I stepped. Outside, the night air felt cool against my skin. I walked down the steps, but stopped at the last one, something making me turn back. She was still there, standing in the doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame. Her cardigan sleeves fell past her wrists. Her face was unreadable, but she didn't look away. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. But in the silence, I felt something shift. Not into place. Not yet. But toward it.